Welcome back to this book study of Business of Honor, and this is where we begin these sections. And this particular section is chapter 2, but it is beginning the journey of identity. So we're going to talk about honor and identity as it pertains to this idea of out of the issues of the heart. Our life influences our environment, our family, our relationships, and so we really have to start to drill into what is it that we hold in our heart. And another way of saying that is our identity. You know, where do we start from? When we get up in the morning, who are we? Do I see myself as heaven sees me? Or do I see myself as something that's been created from my encounter with other people and my time on this planet? So, we mentioned in the last segment about honor is stewarding relationships well, but we're also going to start to now talk about that honor really comes from, or identity comes from what it is that we believe to be true about ourselves. So, Bob, when we get rolling down the track here, essentially what we're talking about is this issue of identity is what that's what you take to work with you. That's what everybody around you experiences. Is people experience what you believe to be true about yourself.
Right, and we expanded on the definition of honor. We looked in the dictionary, and we came up with this. With this definition, that honor is about seeing what's valuable, wonderful, and miraculous in other people, and appreciating being in awe of, loving and acknowledging, otherwise responding to them the way they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the seeing what's miraculous. Sometimes we call it calling out the gold,
mm-hmm.
Or being in awe of what a person is. And in a team, when we go to work, I'm looking for the differences in between my team members, because what that means is we complete each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm not centered in my identity, then how am I going to work with a group?
If you don't have permission in your identity to bring what's valuable and wonderful about you to the job environment, the work environment, how are you ever going to release anybody else in that?
Right, and that goes for families. It goes for every relationship.
Mm-hmm.
We need, to add. And let me read this section of identity that we write, because we did a pretty good job.
Good job.
It's on page 23. The problem for all of us is that the only person who can tell us with final authority who we really are is our Creator. And thanks to the fall, we've grown up with some degree of alienation from Him. Therefore, most of us begin our search for identity in a place where the truth of who we are is obscured by past painful experiences that don't make any sense, by confusing messages from other people, by unhealthy relational dynamics, and by the apparent silence of any ultimate authority who might set it all straight. And that is where we have to pull ourselves into the Lord to find our identity.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, what Stephen Covey wrote in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He's talking about paradigm shifts, and he said something. He said that we don't see the world as it is; we see the world as we are.
Right.
And so the amount of ownership that goes into this identity, and because we're kind of like this snowball rolling down a hill, not realizing that we're picking up everything that's on the surface of the hill. And so when the snow is just rolling through snow, then the snow is all white and fluffy, and it just picked up a bunch of fluffy snow. But when the snowball, when we were kids, we weren't giving up easy. So we're now rolling snowballs through mud and dirt and whatever, any place we could possibly get it. but that snowball's now covered in everything that it rolled through.
Right.
So this journey of identity is really about that. It's about like paying attention to what it is that we came through and how much of it is actually driving the way we see what we look at, the way we see relationships, the way we see people. Is there envy? Is there competition? Is there jealousy? Is there strife, division? Because that stuff comes out of my identity. It isn't just a part of my my mentality or my attitude. It's actually stuck on the way I see things. It's like stuck on my eyeballs.
Right. Your glasses.
Mm-hmm.
So your identity and what we talk about and what we open up are one of our main arguments and points here is the orphan identity.
Yeah.
And you could call it a lot of different things, but an orphan is someone without parents. And we all know the needs of an orphan. But I think if we dive deeper into that, we see that in this life, that all of us have a bit of an orphan mindset when it comes to certain areas in our lives. Some of us have been wounded really deep. We don't have parents. Some of us grew up with amazing parents and know the love of the Father on the far opposite. And that gives those people the ability to connect in a direct line and maybe quicker.
And it's strange that that maybe in some areas of my life, I really do trust the Father. I really do trust God right here. And this is where I show up as a son or daughter. But over here, I am on my own, man. I am a survivor. I am going to have to make my way because I'm acting like an orphan in this part of my life.
Right.
So maybe with finances, I'm really secure and I'm generous and that sort of thing. But when it comes to relational conflict or rejection, I just turn into an orphan, and I am now in a battle each and every time somebody disagrees with me.
And the message of the orphan is no one's going to take care of me.
Yeah.
I'm on my own.
Yeah.
I have to take care of myself.
Yeah.
No one really loves me.
Yeah.
And when we come from, which I came from, that mindset, how are we inviting the Father into these areas of our lives?
Mm-hmm.
And communication suffers, primary relationships suffer, and we suffer.
And it usually shows up when we feel vulnerable. You know, when I feel vulnerable, that is when I actually need a partner. That's when I need protection. That's when I need somebody to love me. That's when I need somebody else's strength. That's when I need trust. And so areas of vulnerability is one of the quickest places to find where these orphan spots are in my life and how am I going to deal with that experience or powerlessness or, like I could get hurt right here.
Right. I came, my background, I grew up with a lot of shame for different reasons, which we'll talk about later. But the Lord challenged me about 5 years ago. Lauren had always been calling me up and out. And as you and I began to hang out, the Lord spoke to me and said, will you say yes to me if people that you trust ask you? And I had to think about that for a while because it is very vulnerable. And what that says is people that I trust, I'm making the assumption that they believe the best in me. And that if they ask me to do something, they're doing it because they see what's good in me, past what I could see. And a lot of the things that have happened to me, you, and Lauren, and others have seen something in me and called me up. This book was a stretch for me. What I had to go through writing this book, in the next chapters we're going to talk about my story, but I literally had to hire a counselor
Amazing.
because you wanted to know how I felt.
Yeah.
And so
Put it into words.
I was dealing with shame and powerlessness and vulnerability and all these things that I tried not to think about my entire life.
Yeah. And so when we writing a book is a very vulnerable experience. Not a lot of people realize that when you throw your thoughts and your your innermost grapplings out on a page for everybody in the world to read, it's a very vulnerable experience. And as well, when you set your heart out there, you have two directions you can go. One is people are going to value this and they're going to benefit, or people are going to attack it and they're going to hurt me and I need to protect myself. So, I mean, like we just talked about with Guinness, Guinness is bringing a display of the Father's heart, which is I'm gonna pour vulnerability into benefiting people. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Enron crowd is like, we don't trust anybody is going to take care of us, so we're going to take care of ourselves and we're going to take what we have to build and to protect our empire.
Right. And so this journey of our identity is breaking shame, breaking mistrust, breaking powerlessness, mm-hmm. and somehow having the ability to be vulnerable in our personal lives. The courage
to be vulnerable. The courage that comes from trusting someone that you believe is going to work everything together for good.
And that's the thing. You talk to any businessman and you say, hey, we're going to talk about being vulnerable. And
they say, oh, my wife tries to get me to do this.
Yeah, I'll be right back. So bringing the heart portion of the journey into business is what you and I have really tried to do here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And part of growing our identity, having the courage to step into those places of vulnerability, living as a powerful person, taking responsibility for what I brought to the relationship, what I brought to the environment. And it is really the beginnings of cultivating a wealth mindset.
Right.
Versus a poverty mentality. I think the orphan is in a constant battle with the fear of poverty and trying to accumulate and resource themselves and protect themselves and using relationships for their benefit, versus the wealth mentality, which is there's no end to what I can bring of benefit to the people around me because I'm connected to the limitless one.
And so one of the things that I always got hung up on, especially hearing people teach on the poverty and the wealth mentality, my mind always goes to finances. Mm-hmm. But the way that I like to think about it is the poverty mentality is expecting a lack of something, whether it's love from the Father, or the fact that your finances are never going to get any better, or that your wife is going to think, not believe the best in you. The wealth mentality is embracing what the Father says about us and understanding that lack is something that's in the rearview mirror. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you teach brilliantly on it.
Well, thank you. I think that as we move into the next chapter that begins to talk about uprooting an orphan heart, I think what we want to grab out of this chapter is that there is a wrestling match inside of every one of us over this idea: are we a child of the King, mm-hmm. or are we orphaned and on our own? And taking a look at throughout our lives, where do those places kind of spark out and flashpoint, mm-hmm. and how do we draw attention to this rule or this battle with what we're talking about soon is the battle with shame.
Right. And the thing that's incredible to me, as I've noticed in myself and other people who I consult with, is that we can be doing fine in a whole bunch of areas of our life, but that these selected areas that we are experiencing a poverty mindset with the Lord.
Yeah. So we're going to move on to chapter 3, Uprooting the Orphaned Heart. And thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next chapter.